Okay. Yeah, got it right.
All right. Here we go, back again on the other side of the coin.
So, yeah.
Hey guys, welcome back to the other side of the coin. I've got a very, very special guest once again here. I've actually spoken to this particular guest before, and I was blown away by the knowledge that this person has, all the footballing knowledge that he has. I'm so glad to have him back. So his name is none other than Zach Lowy. Zach, my man, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Super excited to be back on the podcast. Had a great time on the first episode back in the summer. And so, yeah, really excited to be discussing the first few weeks of Thomas Tuchel's time at Chelsea, as well as a few other topics that you've got lined up for today's episode.
No, absolutely, man. So good to have you. I know I'm going to have a proper discussion today. Shout out to everyone that's joined in, and also shout out to people that are going to join in throughout the session. My main man, Lias, is here. Whole lot of mid. I'm not sure if you know Lias. Zach. He's one of your countrymen, and he's another footballing connoisseur. Actually, he's very, very knowledgeable. So shout out to you, my man Lias, Soccer Turtle. As usual, you're always here. Deep State, thank you for coming along. Patrick Larson, thank you, my man, for joining. And Yusuf, my man, you're always there and supporting. Guys, let's get this show rock and rolling, because obviously there's a whole heap of football that's coming up very soon. Champions League football, there's Premier League football, there's Spanish La Liga going on, and I'm sure we would all want to watch that. So first of all, Zach, let's get straight into this. Thomas Tuchel, as you said, has taken over, in recent times for Chelsea. I just want to get your perspective, because there's majority of the fan base, Zach, in Chelsea are appreciative of the fact that we've made the change, because let's face it, the 2 months prior to Frank Lampard getting sacked, it was really declining fast. The way we were playing, the morale, everything was declining fast. And even certain players weren't looking that great. As soon as Thomas Tuchel has taken over, we've now won 4 Premier League games in a row. We've won, the FA Cup games all up. We've won 5 in a row. And we had that draw in the beginning against Wolves, which I think we probably should have won as well. And it's not just that, the footballing style, defensive structure, the better utilization of the squad. We're far more strategic in the game. And yet still there are certain parts of the fan base, small part, albeit, I suppose cannot appreciate the fact that, I think they can't forget the fact that Frank has been sacked, and they sort of are still a little bit, I suppose, weary about Tuchel, and they're not giving him the right praise, I suppose, with the kind of change that he's already made. They're saying that, we've only come up against oppositions that we should be beating. The real test starts in the month of starts from Atletico Madrid. But from your perspective, Zach, I mean, is it fair not to give Thomas Tuchel the praise that he deserves right now?
Yeah, before we begin, I just want to mention that we have a 27-page analysis on Thomas Tuchel's Chelsea coming out on BTL on Thursday or Friday. So definitely
Brilliant.
Something to keep an eye on. It's really informative. I definitely see both perspectives of this. I think that Lampard, I was a bit surprised that Lampard got the sack so early. I always had misgivings from the start when he was appointed after just one season in management, given the fact that Chelsea, along with maybe Real Madrid, they're the most ruthless club in world football when it comes to managers. If you don't get those results, you're just going to get the sack. So I was a bit surprised when they made that hiring. He did, I think, surpass expectations for the most part, given the fact that, Pulisic, who was brought in to replace the club's talisman, Eden Hazard, kind of took a while to get going. Obviously, he ended up having a very strong start to Project Restart. It was a bit interesting as well that, when Chelsea finally got these players in and finally had, a much bigger squad, that was when Chelsea started to suffer. I guess you could foresee some of that, given the fact that a lot of these players did not have Premier League experience, apart from Ben Chilwell. So it does take time to not only get used to Lampard's style of play, not only get used to playing at Chelsea, but to also just get used to the Premier League. So yeah, I did think that it was a bit premature sacking him after. I think it was after the win against Luton Town, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was.
Um,
But they say that they probably knew beforehand. I think they knew after the Leicester game.
yeah, probably. I mean, at the end of the day, football is a business, and especially in these COVID times, even for an owner as wealthy as Roman Abramovich, the Champions League money makes a huge difference. And it's not just the money; it's also just maintaining that allure, maintaining that standard that Chelsea fans have grown so accustomed to. It also has to do with bringing in players. If you don't have Champions League football, how is that going to affect you if you want to buy somebody like, I don't know, Erling Haaland or Jadon Sancho or Ibrahima Konate, for example? All these things add up. So I think that, I do sympathize with a lot of Chelsea fans who obviously grew up with Lampard being, arguably the greatest player in the club's history, definitely one of the greatest players, seeing that their club idol do well and change some things around in Chelsea. I think that I said on Alex Goldberg's podcast a few weeks ago that my favorite thing that Lampard has done at Chelsea is finally give some youth players a chance. With Reece James, Mason Mount. Obviously, Fikayo Tomori had a good start to his life, but bizarrely kind of frozen out in the end of Lampard's term and is now at Milan. We can get into that later, but in general, I think that's something that a lot of Chelsea managers before him were not doing, despite having incredibly talented players coming through the Cobham ranks. So you definitely have to give him credit, and I think that's certainly one of the reasons why, apart from the fact that he's a club legend, that's definitely one reason why a lot of Chelsea fans feel upset. I mean, this was always going to be a long-term process. Lampard, somebody who had a decent season at Derby County, didn't set the world alight, but who was clearly an inexperienced manager. This was always going to be a long-term process, and it seemed that when they did lose form, that kind of Abramovich sort of I don't want to say threw him to the wolves, but I think that I guess a lot of people were expecting more patience. I thought that this kind of experiment was bound to fail just because Abramovich has always been a ruthless manager. When Ancelotti, for example, 1 year after winning the title, he got the sack, and I believe he only finished second place that season. Second place. So if Carlo Ancelotti, somebody who did incredible things at AC Milan, can't get that patience at Chelsea, it was always going to be unlikely that that Lampard would do the same. I mean, not everybody's going to be Zinedine Zidane, and I think that a lot of teams, including Chelsea, are finding out that lesson the hard way. And it's definitely a shame. I mean, Chelsea's fan base always been a bit polarized, but I definitely think that this hiring, more so than I don't know the sacking of Maurizio Sarri or Antonio Conte, I think it'll just divide the fan base even more, which is definitely a shame. And but I do think you have to definitely give credit to Thomas Tuchel. I mean, like you said, I think they probably should have beaten Wolves in the opening match, and now have had an excellent run of form, keeping several clean sheets and getting back into the top four. At the end of the day, that's the main goal. Chelsea are not going to win the title this season. Top four, maybe a run to the semis at a push. Highly unlikely going up against Atletico Madrid, but top four has to be the bare minimum, for Chelsea. And that's, if they do get top four, then obviously I think that Abramovich can justify, I know we all loved Lampard, but at the end of the day, this is a business, and top four Champions League football is the goal at Chelsea Football Club. And one other thing before we move on to different topics, I do like how Tuchel has been, for the most part, giving the entire squad opportunities. I think that I've enjoyed what he's done with the goalkeeper situation. Giving Kepa 2 straight starts, but also going out and saying, "Listen, I'm just giving Kepa a chance to prove himself. Mendy is still my number one goalkeeper." I like that, and so I think that when you're a new manager, especially coming after a run of form which saw Chelsea drop to, what was it, 8th place in the league, 7th, 10th. Wow. so maybe they weren't that harsh on Lampard. No, but
and this is what I mean, Zach. I just want to interject quickly. This is what I mean. I know everything that you've said completely makes sense, Zach, and I get that, the sentimental value behind it. And Frank was my favorite player growing up. I was in my teens, early 20s when I was going through the whole Lampard sort of situation, and he's brought in such great memories as a player. But I want to take that away as a player and look at him as a manager. I just feel that Chelsea Football Club, being the kind of investments that we've made as well, and I don't expect these investments to turn into gold straight away, but our football club is just too big of a club, in my perspective, to have 2 months of bad form in the month of December and the month of January. We were declining so rapidly that something had to happen, and we couldn't just simply hold on to the whole notion of that, it's a project, we need to be patient. You could see that there were certain players that have stopped believing in what Frank was doing. You could see our performances weren't good enough. And, a lot of people have said that, just like what you said, if Thomas Tuchel doesn't get top four, which I personally thought from the get-go when he came in, even though we were so far behind, that was very much a possibility, because he's an experienced manager, he's a thinker, and I knew it was possible. But a lot of people are sort of getting into the point now that, if he doesn't get the top four, then it doesn't justify the fact that, Roman has changed the manager. For me, I think Roman needed to change regardless, because of everything sort of going backwards. Now you see under Thomas Tuchel, everything in terms of footballing philosophy, our structure, the better usage of the squad that you've said, giving players like Kepa sometimes a go as well, and not headbutting with the board, because board wants to give Kepa an opportunity, and Tuchel's finding ways to give players like Rudiger and Alonso and Kepa a chance as well, and he's still winning matches. So surely, Zach, from your perspective, I guess, as you said, when we're 10th, Roman was left with no choice but to sack Frank Lampard, yeah?
Yeah, and I mean, another thing, I know we just talked about Tuchel giving up certain players chances, but for the most part, he has established a clear-cut structure in his opening games, going with like a mix of a 3-4-1-2 and a 3-4-2-1, depending on the match. I think that, it's Jorginho and Mateo Kovacic in the double pivot. Kovacic, by the way, probably the player who's, along with Hudson-Odoi, whose fortunes have changed the most under Tuchel. It looks kind of reinvigorated. And that's one thing that Lampard, like, my biggest criticism of him is that he never really found that clear-cut system, that clear-cut formation. And you need that. You need, give or take 1 or 2 players, fine, but you need a clear-cut team just for the basis of chemistry, so that when you go up against an Atletico Madrid and a Manchester City, a Liverpool, team, you know what your team's going to do. So I think that was probably one of the biggest criticisms of Lampard's time at Chelsea. And just to touch up on this, I mean, Chelsea did spend over 200 million
250
pounds.
million pounds.
Wow.
250.
So that's 50, not 15. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So yeah, and like, I mean, obviously they brought in Ben Chilwell, who I believe was Lampard's biggest target, spending a fortune on him, spending a ton on a lot of players that Lampard wanted. Compare that to Antonio Conte, who won the title in his first season, and who I remember he wanted, what was it? He wanted Nangolan. He ended up getting
Lukaku.
Lukaku, right? And now he's doing incredible things with Lukaku at Inter. Raja Nainggolan,
I think he wanted Sandro as well, Alexandro.
Right, Alexandro, and he ended up getting. I mean, yeah, I mean, so compare the board's treatment of Conte, who is actually, well, at least when he got to Chelsea, was a serial winner. He had won at Juventus. He had won in his first season at Chelsea, despite having a pretty poor summer window. So compare the board's treatment of Conte to Lampard's, right? Lampard got in all these prized talents, and obviously it was going to be tough to find a system and find a system that gets the most out of their abilities. But as manager, you're paid to do that. You're paid to find a team and find a system that gets the most out of your players' abilities and mask their weaknesses. And at the end of the day, Lampard didn't do it. Would he have done that if he had gotten 5 more months on the job? We'll never know. But I hope that Lampard takes a step down. I don't know, maybe goes to the championship, or perhaps manages like an English youth team. Maybe even goes to MLS. I don't know. But he definitely needs a step down. I don't think that you can just like after that experience. Obviously, managing Chelsea was probably his dream move. So I think if he is serious about having a managerial career, I think he definitely needs to take himself down a few pegs and accept a job on a lower tier, just to work with less spotlight on him, and above all, just have more patience, because young managers, just like young players, they need patience to sort out their flaws and to learn and improve. So
No,
yeah.
100%. 100% agree, Zach, man. I think if, as I said, I've said it to a few people that, if Lampard has to first be honest to himself whether he wants to continue in this managerial sort of career. That's one thing he needs to realize. If he wants to do that, that's fine. But as you said, then he needs to sort of humble himself and just probably look at some lower divisions, in the sense of maybe Championship, or as you said, MLS, or maybe other clubs in Europe, just to be sort of, I don't know, whether it be in somewhere in Europe, sort of lower division clubs, just to sort of build up that experience before he starts tackling any of these sort of big time leagues, like in the Premier League, or let's say in the Spanish league, or whatever the case is. But yeah, 100% understand. Just quickly to wrap up the Thomas Tuchel subject, and before moving into the other sort of players, from your perspective, do you think Tuchel will be a bit of a success at Chelsea, or do you think the same sort of fate, of the managerial chop and change? Do you think someone like Thomas Tuchel does have what it takes to mix it up in the Premier League?
I think so. I mean, I think he definitely does have that potential to be a success. It's so hard to say with Chelsea, because I mean, we've seen so many success stories who end up not being long-term successes, like Antonio Conte, for example. So it's hard to say, but at the end of the day, this Chelsea team has a ton of talent, and it has a lot of flexibility, I think, especially if they do get top four, which is looking more likely at this point. It looks like they're going to be battling it out with Liverpool for that final top four spot. But yeah, no, I think that he does have what it takes to be a success in the Premier League. He's already managed teams where the pressure is high with Borussia Dortmund and PSG. Has a
Hmm.
ton of talent at his disposal. I mean, let's not underestimate just because of the poor start to the season. Let's not underestimate how much talent there is. If
Yeah.
you bring in a player like, I don't know, Erling Haaland, uh, then the possibilities are just endless. So I
Hmm.
do think he has what it takes to be a success in London.
Nah, for sure, for sure. I believe it as well. And as you said, if we get Haaland into the ranks, I think it's going to be very, very interesting. It'll be a proper shake-up in the Premier League. Zach, let's move on to the next topics. I want to talk about three particular players that the live chat, almost in every streams that I do, always want to know how to get the best out of them. How do we fit them? They are Ziyech, Pulisic, and Kai Havertz. Three players that you know very well in detail. I guess, look, all of these three players have been injury sort of prone, and it's affected their game time, it's affected their rhythm. But now that slowly by slowly, I suppose Pulisic is well and truly, he's knocked off all of his injury sort of scenarios. Ziyech seems to be working his back in terms of his fitness. Kai Havertz is still injured, but I think he should be back against Southampton. That's what Thomas Tuchel said in the last previous press conference. From your perspective, Zach, in the 3-4-3 sort of, well, let's just say we're playing the three. Really, it's a 3-2-4-1, or sometimes we're playing with the 3-2. 3-2, yeah, 3-2-3-2. It's sort of like five in
Right.
defense, five in attack. That's what we're doing, sort of, with the wing backs. In that perspective, how do you believe we can get the best out of Ziyech, Pulisic, and Kai Havertz?
Yeah, it's hard to say because just there's so much competition um, ahead of them. I think that Havertz, obviously he's had a tough time with COVID and just getting back to prime levels physically. But I think that I would actually like to see Havertz being given an opportunity in the central forward position. I
Mm.
know that if I'm not mistaken, um, uh, Abraham is a doubt for the weekend.
Injured. I think he's injured. Yeah.
Right. So I guess there's a possibility that he would miss out, and I would still assume that Giroud gets the starting spot over Havertz, given that he's
Mm.
coming back from injury. But I think that the nine position, given the fact that Abraham and Giroud haven't quite cemented a hold on that starting spot, I think there's definitely a lot of potential for Havertz to stake a claim there.
Mm.
We saw him have a lot of success in that role in the latter stages of last season. At Bayer Leverkusen after Kevin Volland's injury, really just
Yeah.
linking up well. It wasn't really a center forward; it was more of a false nine. But linking
Mm.
up well, dropping deep, and really just connecting the attack together. I think that's what Havertz does best. He's a master at really interpreting space and knowing where his teammates are going to be. Obviously, been a tough start to life in London for him, but
Mm.
I honestly think that a central forward role, or I guess a false nine role, would help get the most out of his abilities. It's not easy to transition from one. It's not easy to transition from the Bundesliga to the Premier League. Another, it's not easy to transition from a team where you're the star, where you're expected to do everything, to a team where you're just another cog, right? And we've seen that
Yeah.
with not just Havertz, but a lot of other players, such as
Mm.
Timo Werner and Hakim Ziyech this season. Moving on to those other players, uh, I think Ziyech. I think Ziyech might be the toughest one to I guess accommodate into the starting lineup, just because I'm just not sure if the 3-4, or I guess 3-2-1, whatever it is. I'm not
Yeah,
sure
yeah,
how
yeah.
much if that really does him any favors, because he is a player who I think reached a lot of success at Ajax, playing
Mm,
almost on as like a false 10, playing
yeah.
like on the right side of the 4-2-3-1 under Eric Ten Hag, having liberty to cut inside, to pick out players, and really just to having a lot of space to exploit. And
Would you
and I
say somewhat similar to what Kai does as well? Like sort of like I know
yeah,
Kai's with the false nine, but Ziyech with a false 10. They like that sort of free role pretty much, both of them.
right. And it's made like, I think it's made even arguably even tougher um with a player like Hudson Odoi, who isn't really a wing back. He's more of a forward. I'm not sure yet if it's going to be easier for him for either Havertz or Ziyech to do a job on the right side with Reece James or Hudson Odoi. I just think that a player like Hudson Odoi, he may have a better time playing alongside someone like Mason Mount as opposed
Mm,
to someone like Havertz or Ziyech. So it's a bit tough. I think that whereas Havertz, I think, would do really well playing in a false nine role. I think that Ziyech, his best bet is probably trying to beat out um I guess Mount for that, I guess, right inside forward role.
yeah, yeah.
He definitely has a lot more. He definitely seems a lot more comfortable playing on the right side than the left. So I think that's probably his best bet for turning his fate under Tuchel around. And yeah, as for Pulisic, it's a bit tough because he did have uh, arguably the best form of his career under Tuchel,
Yeah.
um,
At
at
Dortmund.
at at Borussia Dortmund. Obviously, he was great for the last few weeks of the season. But I think in terms of like a consistent run of form over several months, I think that his best form is probably under Tuchel at Dortmund. So I think that his best bet is probably going to be fighting it out with Timo Werner for that
Mm,
left inside role. Um,
yeah.
I it's funny. I know that Pulisic, nobody really knows what his best position is. Even American fans who watch him play for the national team, there's like, oh, he needs to play in the 10 role, and others like, no, he needs to be playing on the left or the right. And it's like, I mean, he's a quality player wherever he plays for the national team. It's a bit different for Chelsea, though, going up against players such as Timo Werner, Hakim Ziyech, Mason Mount, a lot more competition. So, and at the same time, there's going to be less patience for Pulisic. If you have a bad game, you might see yourself sitting on the bench for the next 3 games. Whereas with the national team, if you have a bad game, okay, you're still going to be back starting, guaranteed. So that's definitely something that
Mm,
he needs to get used to, and something that, yeah, I mean, only Tuchel will get to decide. It's a headache for him. I know that Pulisic has played pretty much in a lot of positions under Tuchel, playing almost as a wing back, playing
yeah,
even in
left wing
central
back
midfield.
against
He even played
Wolves.
right. He even played in like a central midfield role at Dortmund. So it's a bit tough, but yeah, I guess I mean I assume there is potential for that, playing in a wing back role if Reece James does end up um beating Hudson Odoi out for a right wing back for the right wing back position.
Mm,
I don't see why we couldn't have like a repeat of that. Right now it's Hudson Odoi on the right and Marcus Alonso incredibly in the starting left wing back position. I don't see why that couldn't change. Whereas, if James does manage to win back his starting spot on that right wing back
mm.
position, why not putting in a winger on the left side this time as opposed to the right with Pulisic?
Yeah.
So it's really tough. There's no easy answer, for any of those three. But the good thing for both Tuchel and those players is that time is on their side. Pulisic he's been in the team for 1.5 years, the others for just a few months. So it's not like they're going to be sold immediately if they don't perform. They do have time on their side. We'll see what happens. I think that out of those three, I think that Ziyech is definitely at the highest risk for getting sold. But still, you do have to remember that these players have time on their side, and I think that both the board and Tuchel will think, let's give them a few more months to prove themselves. If things go wrong, we can always sell them in January 2022, right?
Yeah, no, of course. It's so interesting the way you've sort of put all that together. Just quickly, shout out to Term CFC. That's a really good comment. Miz, does it worry you how lopsided we are at attacking? I 100% think most of our attacks comes from the right side, not necessarily on the left. But it's also very interesting what you said, Zach, in regards to these players, Havertz, Pulisic and Ziyech, and who they're matched up against. If you look at Kai, as you said, he's probably matched up against Tammy and Giroud up front for that particular position, which makes sense to me because he does love playing that sort of false nine, allows him to drop deep in midfield and manipulate with space. And I think that's probably more or less what people, they sort of deem him as a number 10, but I think he's more of a false nine where he can sort of attack the box, but at the same time drop deep and link up in midfield. So that makes sense. As you said, Ziyech's competition is probably Mason Mount, and that's going to be a heavy competition for Ziyech because as much as Mason probably doesn't have that, the key. I know a lot of people are going to throw the key, the stats about key passes and whatnot. I think what I'm trying to say is that Ziyech has that X factor in terms of that passing range, but what Mason brings is a lot of intensity, a lot of energy. And right now he's in form, so it's going to be very difficult for Ziyech to sort of take over. And I think Mason is probably Ziyech's competition for that spot, and Pulisic is probably the inside forward, and his competition is probably Timo Werner. And Timo Werner is probably one of the most informed players for us at the moment. I just tweeted a moment ago that he scored the goal obviously against Newcastle, was very, very instrumental to Giroud's goal. Prior to that, he also assisted for Mason Mount's goal against Sheffield United, got the penalty in Sheffield United. Prior to that, he got the penalty against Spurs. So he's very much in form. So it'll be very, very difficult for some of these players to really find a way back in. But as you said, could be an interesting factor with Pulisic perhaps playing as a left wing back. We've seen Cho playing as a right wing back. But what it probably does is defensively we get a bit, I suppose, wide open. With Alonso, you can at least hope that he adds something when it comes to the aerial battles, even though I don't really think how much does he really add. But a lot of managers go on and say that, because of his height, he adds something. But just quickly, Zach, before we wrap this section up, do you think there is a way to perhaps fit all of these players in our best 11, or do you think it's just too much of an imbalance at the moment to have, Ziyech, Kai Havertz and Pulisic in Chelsea's best 11?
I mean, so it looks like Lampard is going to continue with a back three for the time being. So that
Tuchel.
Sorry, Tuchel. Tuchel, definitely not. My mistake. Sorry, Tuchel. Okay, so Tuchel is going to come and continue with a back three for the time being. So that combined with the goalkeeper leaves 7 positions available. Then take away the 2 midfielders, which looks like it's going to be Jorginho and Kovacic for the time being. That leaves 5 positions. So 5 potential positions between those from the players that we were just talking about, right? So Pulisic, Havertz, Mount, Ziyech, Werner, and then you also have to take into account Abraham, Giroud, and I would still think that unless you're going up against like a team that's just set up to defend, I think that Tuchel would probably go along with that, what he's been doing, having a winger on one wing back, on one
Yeah.
flank as a wing back, and having like more of a natural player, whether that be Alonso or Chilwell or James on the other flank. So really that leaves 4 positions available for the attacking players. So
Mm.
so I don't think there's any way to include all of those. I guess it would be if one of Havertz or Werner. Hey, sorry about that. My internet died for a second. Um, so that basically leaves 4 potential positions, right, between between those players. So I think that it would become a little bit easier if one of Havertz or Werner prove that they can play in an essential forward position. But yeah, I don't think there's any way at the moment for Tuchel to fit all those players in. Sorry about that.
Nah, 100%, 100%. Good to have you back. I was just saying, I got a bit worried in between that. Oh my God, Zach's gone. I got to run the show myself. No, but completely understand. Yeah, you're right. If we continue with the wing back sort of scenario, and we're using a particular winger on as one of the wing backs, and then we've got the 5 defenders. It really just leaves 4 more attackers, and it's going to be very difficult to have all of these players sort of play. Completely understand. And I guess as a fan base, we just need to be patient as to see what Tuchel does. Whether he changes the formation down the track. I just don't think we're going to see all of these players play in the same sort of team week in, week out. We will see rotations or whatnot. It'll be very difficult to fit Ziyech, Pulisic, Havertz, Werner, Mason Mount, Tammy Abraham all at once. It's just going to be very difficult. I think it really depends on the opposition, who we play and how we want to go about it. That's probably the best way to do it. Zach, let's move on to the next topic, which is about the centre backs that we've been heavily linked with. It looks like it's 100% obvious that Chelsea's going to go out there and buy a centre back, an experienced centre back. Seems like we've been linked with David Alaba, we've been linked with Jerome Boateng, we've been linked with Nicolas Sole. I was a bit weary. I was thinking, why not give someone like Ethan Ampadu or Mark Guehi an opportunity? But I completely understand what the fan base is saying, that in terms of we need experience at the back, and if we want to mount a challenge, we need high caliber players who know these situations a lot more. But I don't want to talk about those players. I want to talk about 2 other defenders that the fan base are very excited about. I want to get your thoughts on these 2 players. Ibrahim Konate, I believe from Red Bull Leipzig, and also Kounde from Sevilla. I have not watched 2 of these players enough to make any sort of judgment. That's why I've got you here. Please let us know about both of these particular defenders and who has the higher potential, and who could possibly go out there and go and get a big club down the track.
Yeah, just want to throw in a quick shout out to ex-Chelsea player Ola Aina, who just scored against Burnley. Good to see him doing well on the other side of London. But yeah, or I guess
I hope, as you said, I hope Fulham gets doesn't get relegated. I hope they stay in the Premier League. As you said, they do play some good football under Scott Parker.
Yeah, no, I really hope they stay up too. But yeah, going back to you talking about center backs. First off, I highly recommend any viewers who want to learn more about Ibrahim Konate, definitely check out the piece we ran on BTL Vid a few days ago by Tom Quartley, going over Konate's rise, his profile. I think that with Upamecano set to join Bayern Munich next summer, he will definitely get his name will definitely be mentioned more in terms of a potential target for Premier League teams. He's a very good young center back. I think what stands out the most is his ability on the ball, his ability to go forward and break the lines, arguably to an even better degree than Upamecano. I think he's probably even less error prone than his compatriot. And yeah,
Yeah,
he's
Upamecano is very error prone, isn't he? Like he's made some
yeah,
errors yesterday, and I've seen him make errors previously as well. A lot of our fan base, they really rate Upamecano, but I feel like we can't harbor a player that continuously, has errors in him, high profile errors as well.
yeah. I mean, I rate Upamecano more than most, just because I'm a bit biased. I've been following him for a while, so I've wanted him to do well. Actually, I honestly thought that he would have probably struggled in the Premier League more than the Bundesliga. I thought that the best option for him was actually to join up with Jose Mourinho at Tottenham, because Mourinho, for all his flaws, he's always been a pretty good manager when it comes to developing young, rash center backs. We've seen that with players like Varane, Zuma, even Tanganga a bit at Tottenham. So I honestly
Hmm.
thought that Tottenham are in desperate need of a center back right now, and I guess Tottenham. Obviously, Bayern are a step up above Tottenham, but I honestly thought that if he was going to join a Premier League team, I thought that Tottenham would have probably been the best option for him. But he's going to Bayern, so that's probably
Yeah.
the best move for him in terms of masking his limitations and in increasing his potential. Um, but yeah, moving on. So I think that Konate, he's a very promising young center back, physically just incredible. He's rapid, a lot quicker than Upamecano, and yeah, just is just physically really impressive in terms of timing interceptions and recovering on the counterattack. Um, However, I think that if I had to compose a list of center backs that Chelsea should sign, he
Hmm.
probably would not be in my top five, um, just because of his injury record. Um,
Oh
and
wow.
that
Okay.
was and that was one of my main concerns for Upamecano. But I think that Konate has an even worse injury record. It's just kind of hard to see. And when you look at his body and his physical build, it does make sense a bit. He has just so much muscle, and it can definitely put a lot of pressure on your knees and hamstrings, and lead to high impact injuries. And I think you would see even more of that potentially in the Premier League. So
Hmm.
while he is an incredibly promising center back who will definitely develop a lot under Julian Nagelsmann, I would personally stay away from him just because of injuries. At the end of the day, availability is the most valuable skill in football.
Yeah.
You need to be able to be available for 9 out of 10 games, and if you aren't, then it doesn't matter how good you are. You will probably end up being a flop, right?
Yeah.
So because of that, I would stay away. I would avoid Konate. I know he has what I think a 40 million euro release clause, which isn't bad for a player of his potential. But like I said, if you're not available for 9 out of 10 games, then I think that's too much of a risk I'd be willing to take. Um,
Hmm. And I
on
just saw his age as well. Like he's 21, and if he's having so many injuries,
Right.
that's probably not the greatest way to go about. We've seen a lot of youngsters when they have a lot of injuries, they generally don't end up having a very good career.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Ruben Loftus-Cheek is uh,
Yeah.
kind of another example of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the main reason why I would stay away from Konate. But that being said, there are a lot of promising center backs on the market who I think would definitely improve um, Chelsea. Um, and before we get into those, I would just like to say I do hope that Mark Guehi gets somewhat of an opportunity, gets a few
Hmm.
opportunities when he returns from his loan at Swansea. I know it's a bit tough going up against players like Thiago Silva and Kurt Zuma, but he's done quite well um, in over the past over the past season, about to be 1.5 seasons at Swansea, and been really important in their promotion push. So I would like to see him get an opportunity. If that's not realistic, then I definitely think that he should be getting a loan to a Premier League side, because he's a very promising young player who I think has the potential to challenge for a starting spot.
Yeah.
But yeah, moving on to those center backs who could improve them apart from Konate. Yeah, you mentioned Jules Kounde, who I think is just incredible. We ran a really long analysis on him a few months prior on BTL. Very promising young center back. I think it's funny. People always ask me, Kounde, he's like what 6'10", 6'5'10", around that height. Not very tall.
Yeah, not the tallest defender.
Does the lack of an aerial presence concern you? And honestly, if you watch him, you will realize that an aerial ability is actually one of his strongest strengths. One of his biggest strengths. It's incredible. Like he really knows how to compensate for his lack of height with just timing and concentration and just strength. I mean, it's incredible to watch. Not many players like that. I think that Puyol maybe, but you don't.
Cannavaro.
Cannavaro, of course. You don't get a lot of players like that. And I think that's just the best of both worlds, because a lot of these lanky 6'4", 6'5" defenders will get exposed against agile, smaller players. But with Kounde, I think that it's really hard to point out a flaw in his game. One flaw I think is probably like a lack of presence in the box. On the other box, he doesn't have a great goal scoring record, but he gets contact on a lot of set pieces. He just doesn't, test the goalkeeper that often. But yeah, he's just an incredibly young center back, and I think that the issue is, I mean, he'll probably end up being the most expensive center back of all time. I think that I'm not.
Wow, you think he's going to be the most expensive center back, yeah?
Of all time. Well, I mean, I think that Bordeaux have a 20% resale clause on him. I'm not 100% sure. It's a hefty resale clause though, so they are going to be getting a percentage when Sevilla eventually do sell him. So as a result, Monchi is going to be wanting to get top dollar for him, knowing that Bordeaux will get a piece of the pie. So I'm not. I forgot what exactly City were bidding for him. Obviously, their backup didn't work out that poorly as well with Ruben Diaz. But
Ruben Diaz is probably one of the best Premier League defenders right now.
I would argue he's the best. He's just been incredible. I think signing of the summer right now, and obviously not on the market anymore. But I think that's a lesson for Chelsea. You may not be able to get your number one target for a center back, but the backup might not be that bad. He might be what's missing to take you guys to the next level. So that's just something that Chelsea fans need to take into account. So
by the way, does he have any injury issues, Kounde?
Kounde, not that I'm aware of. I mean, he's probably had some injuries, but I don't remember him. I mean, he debuted at Bordeaux, I think, what was it, like January 2018 under Gus Poyet, ex-Sunderland manager. And so in those 3 years, I don't recall any major injuries. I'd have to look it up, but
someone here just commented that Kounde and Konate only plays 15 games a season. As you said, I don't want them to come into Chelsea and just play 15 games.
Exactly. But I mean, whenever you watch Kounde, I was watching him last week against Barcelona, and he just I still can't even process what he did. He just dribbled and was playing like he was Neymar and just like scored an incredible goal. I don't know. He's just like I would be shocked if he isn't the most expensive defender of all time when Sevilla do eventually sell him. I like whenever like I'm also struggling to think of when was the last time I saw a defender who gets so many like last ditch clearances. There are so many times where like the goalkeeper, the Sevilla goalkeeper, whether that's Vaklik or Bono, will be out of position, and Kounde will just track back and just like go up and head the ball over the goal for a corner kick, and it's just like it's just art. It's just magic. He's done so many of those, and like just like that's probably the hardest thing to do as a center back, getting into the position and making a last ditch clearance with your head. I'm not even talking about, I mean, he's got fair number of tackles and clearances with his feet, but with his head. And that's another reason why I don't think you can use his lack of height as a weakness, because he knows how to use his head. He's aerially, he's just incredible in that degree. So like I said, I do think that when he leaves, whether that be for Chelsea or I could definitely see Real Madrid making a move if Sergio Ramos does leave this summer. When he does leave, I would be shocked if he is not the most expensive defender of all time, breaking Harry Maguire's record.
Wow, that's massive. Yeah. I'm gassed now. I feel like I need to check up on Kounde. And to everyone, what Zach has been saying, please check out their website. They're Breaking the Lines. Everything's in the description right now. All their socials and whatnot, Zach's socials. They've got some incredible articles, and as Zach said, they've got some big articles coming up for Thomas Tuchel. They've got some articles on Konate and Kounde. So if you do want to know a little bit more, I want to know a little bit more. I know I'm definitely going to go to that particular website and check all of that out. Just quickly, Zach, if it was between Konate and Kounde, I think it's quite straightforward. But if Chelsea were going for one of them, you'd probably say Kounde, yeah?
Yeah, I would say Kounde. I think one. I mean, I think that Abramovich has never been an owner who's afraid to spend. He's Chelsea fans can't. You have to have gratitude that your owners are not like FSG or the Glazers. Abramovich is somebody who's not afraid to get out and spend. I could never imagine Chelsea having a massive injury crisis in defense like Liverpool have, and Abramovich waiting until the final day just to get 2 loan deals in, just to get a loan deal and a deal for a championship defender, and like that. I
mean, who were those defenders that Liverpool got? I mean, kudos to Liverpool. Yeah, they always end up getting some really, really good deals with Robertson and whatnot, but no one had any idea about them.
Right, yeah, Ben Davies from Preston North End and Ozan Kabak, who I thought actually did pretty well yesterday against Leipzig. We'll see what happens, but the point is, I think that FSG waiting that long until the final day probably killed Liverpool's title challenge. I mean, let's not forget that they were first when the window started, if I'm not mistaken. They were in first place. Now they're fifth, sixth? Like
they're sixth now.
West Ham have even gone. It's so like my point is I could never see that happening under Abramovich. Waiting until the final just to get the best deal, like it's some supermarket deal, like you're trying to get your coupon in, like that would never happen at Chelsea. But yes, I mean, to your point, I do think that Jules Kounde would be the best option. At the end of the day, he's not injury prone like Konate, and at 22, I think he's already like probably a top 5 center back in Europe. I mean, it's just hard to find a flaw in his game. He's just an incredible young defender, and I think that the transition, and given the fact that he's already impressed in both Ligue 1 and La Liga, I think that the transition to the Premier League wouldn't be that bad, given just how special he is as a defender. And at the end of the day, you've got to pay the best to buy the best. But yeah, I like I said, I don't think I'm not sure that Konate would be in my top 5 potential signings for Chelsea in defense. And that's really mainly just because of his injury record. If we can go back to this in a year, and if Konate does avoid any long-term injuries, maybe he will be the priority for Chelsea. Maybe he will be a player that Chelsea should sign. But at the moment, it just doesn't look good. I think that if I was Chelsea, I think Kounde would be my top priority. Aside from that, I would also be looking at Sven Botman from Lille, a player who has really impressed me this season since joining from Ajax. He came and replaced Gabriel Magalhaes for, I think it was 8 million euros, and they're already saying that, I think it was Canal Plus who reported that that they've already agreed to sell him for 45 million euros to a Premier League team this summer. I'm not sure how true that is, but I think that Chelsea could theoretically slide in and put in a 50 million, 45 million offer for him, so he would definitely be on my short list for defender. I think just looking at his physical capabilities, he really is just he really is just an incredible young defender. Besides Boatman, I would also be looking at Wesley Fofana. I think Fofana.
Oh man,
He's
he is
been
unbelievable, Zach. Wesley Fofana is going to be a superstar for Leicester.
Yeah, I mean, he already is. The fact that Leicester are still in the top 4. I think they're the only team that's remained in the top 4 this entire season. Obviously, Fofana joined in October, so he's not totally responsible for that. But he's just been, I think, after Diaz, he might be the best signing of the season. I mean, he's just been absolutely incredible. So yeah, I think that after Kounde, I think those two players, I would definitely be looking at to reinforce Chelsea's back line. I'm not sure if Fofana would be. He might be a little cheaper than Kounde, but Leicester are a club that demand top dollar for their players at all time. And to their credit, they've kind of made a habit under John Radkin of only selling like one starter or one key player per summer. I think like last summer it was Chilwell. Before that, the summer before that, it was Maguire. Then you had players like Drinkwater and Mahrez.
Oh no,
and Konate. So definitely a few players that Chelsea fans are familiar with. So yeah, I think that. I mean, if he isn't the most expensive vendor when Leicester do sell him, he's definitely going to be in Maguire territory. He's just an incredibly young defender. I think that when I believe he started the first 3 games of the season for Saint Etienne before he put in his transfer request and at L'Equipe and had that blockbuster interview, demanding a transfer. And I think that, if I'm not mistaken, they kept 3 clean sheets to start the season, and went to the top of a table now. And now when you look at them, 5 months later, 4 months later, they're really fighting off relegation. They're just a few points off the relegation zone. So that really does tell you a lot about how important he is. I mean, and the fact that Leicester spent all that money on him, despite him only playing, I don't know, 30 games for Saint Etienne at the professional level, it does tell you, when you don't need to have 3 full seasons of professional football under your belt to be a star and for teams to know that this kid's going to be a world beater. Certainly was not the case with PSG and Kylian Mbappe. So it's just another reason why, you don't need 1 or 2 seasons to prove yourself as this top player. And I think that a lot of teams like Barcelona and Real Madrid made that mistake with Mbappe. And maybe some teams,
Chelsea made that mistake with Mbappe. Chelsea
made
were
that, yeah. What am I
we
saying?
wanted
Chelsea
him to
made that mistake.
defend.
Imagine Mbappe in this Chelsea team. Like, don't even worry about what position he's gonna play. Just like, man. But yeah, no. I mean, at the end of the day, quality over quantity. So I think that's definitely one thing to keep for Chelsea fans to keep in mind in this center back search. And another thing is that, if your top priority doesn't work out, like it was like the case with City and Ruben Diaz, don't. It's not the end of the world. I mean,
Yeah.
with City and Kounde getting Ruben Diaz, it's not the end of the world. There are plenty of other players who have that potential to be a game changer signing, like Van Dijk was for Liverpool, like Diaz is being for City. At the end of the day, they just need to do their homework and find out what player is going to fit the best in this team. But yeah, if you had to ask me, I think it would probably be Jules Kounde. And while he is playing in a back four at Sevilla, he did start out playing in a back three at Bordeaux. So definitely has experience with either of those systems. And yeah, at the end of the day, I think he's just the best center back on the market, going to cost a ton of money. But if Manchester United end up getting him and they end up winning the title, Chelsea are going to be kicking themselves and saying, "Damn, why didn't we spend like 80 million, 90 million on him when we had the chance?"
Yeah. No, 100%, Zach. I mean, now you've really, really hyped up Kounde, and I need to start watching this player. Look, a lot of our fan base have been talking about Kounde for a very, very long time, and they've been saying that this guy is absolutely special. And if we're looking for a long-term sort of successor in the defensive area, and if Kounde is that particular player that can sort of take over, I'm more than happy for us to spend the money. As you said, Zach, Roma's not that kind of a man that has shied away from spending money. He's thrashed money out there. If the player is good enough, he'll throw the money. And if we can, help us win titles down the track, by all means, as you said, it'd be a shame to give away that kind of a very, very high caliber player to the rivals. And if they go ahead and go and win titles with them, that's going to be a shame. But honestly, thank you so much, Jack, for your time, the amount of knowledge you've given us for Konate and Kounde and all the other stuff about Ziyech, Pulisic, and Kai Havertz. And thank you so much for all of that. Guys, hope you guys enjoyed all of that information from Zach. Please check out the description right now for Zach's socials, especially Breaking the Lines. They do some incredible work over there. So please check that out and save it in your profile somewhere in your laptop, phone, whatever, and constantly check that out. Some final words from you, Zach, before we go.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me on. It was a pleasure to come on for the second time. Always a pleasure coming on, and yeah, I really hope to be on it.
Absolutely, man. I'm 100% going to have you on more.
Giving me a chance to speak about these players and about Tuchel's Chelsea. Definitely keep an eye out on ETL Vid for our 27-page ultimate analysis on Thomas Tuchel's Chelsea in his first few weeks. It's massive and it's pretty incredible. But yeah, no, thank you so much again. Good luck against Atletico, and really hope to be speaking again soon.
Brilliant. Please let me know when you do publish that Thomas Tuchel article. Just DM me or tag me. I want to retweet that. Hopefully everyone from the Chelsea fan base gets to see that as well. Guys, with that said, enjoy your evening wherever you are, or your morning. For me, it's morning, or your afternoon, where I believe Zach is. Enjoy the Champions League matches. Until next time. Oh, by the way, I will be back tomorrow, same time, 7 p.m. UK time. Please look out for it with a Southampton preview with some Southampton fans. I believe they're called Match Day Vlogs. They're a Southampton-based YouTube channel. I'll have I'll have Mike and Jack, I believe, the two people from Southampton. So do tune in for that tomorrow, 7 p.m. UK Southampton preview. Guys, until next time, see ya.